Rob, I want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy, insanely busy schedule to be with me late on a Tuesday night. You know, two very busy individuals. You and I joke about that quite often. You told me several weeks ago, don't work too hard. And here it is, 8 p.m. on a Tuesday. You just got done with work and taking time to share with my audience. Thank you so much.
Yeah, pleasure to be here, Dr. Dan.
You, Rob, we've known each other for a whole couple months now. It's just Dan, man. But
All right, Dan.
um,
Fair enough.
yeah, and it's great, quick friends, quick brothers in arms, brothers in helping other human beings. It was only back last October or November, we were having our pre-meeting before our ketamine practicum in Boulder, Colorado. We're all on a Zoom screen. Um, and we're doing our introductions. And from across the country, these two beautiful bald men, being us, introduced themselves. And you said something. You said, "Hi, I'm Rob. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I'm a digital nomad." And of all the people that spoke that, I said, "Digital nomad. That is the coolest title I've heard in a long time. I've got to get to know more." And so, we emailed back and forth and connected at the practicum. But what you got to share about this digital nomading, man, because I love this story. What does it mean to be a digital nomad? How did you get there?
Yeah, so you know, great question. During the pandemic, I felt very, very responsible to my patients. March of 2020, I came down with a really, really bad case of COVID that ran about 3 months. It was bad. Uh, the only thing that saved me was working with my clients on the screen. We were all kind of, what was the expression back then, flying the plane while you're trying to
Mhm.
figure out how to build it or whatever,
Mhm.
people used to say.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it was like, I don't know, months and months, Dan, in the office. And just, I'd heard from colleagues that a lot of, their patients were either relapsing and having to go into rehab if they can get in, or there was a higher rate of suicidality or people having suicidal ideation. So I really felt a strong pull when I felt better. So I think it was about May, yeah, about May of 2020. And I had gone out, maybe Walmart or Home Depot. I purchased three HEPA filters and all the N95 masks that you could possibly find at the store. And I had Lysol. And after every patient, I sprayed the office. I my patients thought it was OCD or just a germaphobe or something. And I'm like, look, if this is the only way that people feel safe, I'm going to create that space. And so anyway, fast forward, I did that for, a good 2 years. And after that, a lot of my colleagues had pieced out and they were doing the remote work, right? So I'm like, okay, I've kind of paid my dues. I was here, I was present for people when they needed me. Now I need to be present for myself. And my first jump in this quote unquote digital nomad decision was to I basically let go of my office in Darien, Connecticut, and they have a travel office arrangement. So I was, as I promised my patients before I left that I would come once a quarter for about a week or two. So I've maintained that more or less, but I just started traveling, and I mean, this is a whole other podcast in and of itself. But my one of my first trips was to Poland and then on to Ukraine. I got involved with a NGO, non-government organization, and I was able to go in there and help train some healthcare workers there in trauma because I do EMDR as well. So that was just amazing. And so I felt like I was becoming a better therapist just by being out of my space and having different life experiences. And it's just grown kind of from there. That was a very long way of saying digital nomad is basically wherever you are, you pop up an iPad and then and then you talk to your patients.
Well, and that's the great, I mean, if anything good came from COVID, it's that we can do that. And you've certainly like Poland, Ukraine, was Italy in there somewhere as well? Seattle, Florida. You've been all over the place in the past 4
Yeah.
years.
I think about 18 countries in the last 2.5 years. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't realize that. That's amazing. 18 countries. So I mean, I have to ask, what was your favorite? What was your top three?
Oh gosh. So I absolutely fell in love with Costa Rica when I went
Mm,
there for the first time, which I don't even remember what year it was I went for the first time. I the people were just so warm. The beaches were beautiful. Some people complain about the heat, but having spent a good amount of time in Florida didn't bother me. The jungle in between, the rainforest. I mean, just the natural beauty, the people. You just felt the warmth. So
mm,
that's probably so Central America. That's my favorite country. Uh, I'll have to say it's Italy because I'm Italian. So I mean, I feel like my family in Italy is more like family than my family here, and I'm not throwing my family here under the bus. They
mhm,
just have a very la dolce vita, the sweet life in Italy. They really,
mhm.
wow. So this is my cousin, my uncle, whatever from the United States, and yeah, they just take time to eat. They just take time to talk. It's a whole, yeah.
Yeah, I know last summer I spent time in a variety of countries in Europe, and it's just you're right, they do it different. And I'm sure that yeah, I don't think I've set foot in Italy yet. That is a goal, but just that whole European idea of taking your time,
Mm.
enjoying meals together, not working too hard. When they look at us like, well, you work too hard over there. And all right, so let's get to the big inside joke. You and I are working way too hard lately. You told me a couple weeks ago in passing, hey, ha ha ha, don't work too hard. And then the next time I talk to you, you're like, yeah, man, I just got done with an 11-hour day. I'm like, come on, man, we can't be doing that.
That was last week.
Yeah, yeah, just last week. And here it is again. I mean, I've clients and sessions and meetings today. I mean, I love doing it, but it's Tuesday. It's, pushing 9 o'clock. Here we are having this chat. Why are we working so hard? Why are therapists working so hard these days?
Yeah, honestly, I think so. When I used to work, I worked at a hospital called Silver Hill, and it was the first 5 years as getting my clinical hours. It was a
Mhm.
wonderful experience working at a very well-known hospital where they treated addiction, dual diagnosis, major mental health. I mean, they had units for everything there. It's very well known, very well established, known as the hospital for the rich and famous kind of thing. But yeah, I just lost track of thought. Damn it, sorry. I was
Why are
going
we working so
somewhere.
hard, Rob?
Why
Your
are we working
your your
so?
experience at Spring Hill
Yeah, at the Silver Hill Hospital, right?
or
So
Silver Hill, sorry, yeah.
no, it's okay. So the reason I brought up the hospital was because I eventually end up in management, and there's this connection with patients, right? So even though my shift might be over, sometimes I'm like, okay, I want to kind of stay and maybe spend some time with the guys. This is when I was managing the Scavetta House, it was called. And I think the same thing comes up now in private practice, where we just have I'll speak with I statements. I have an intuition, or you have a clinical sense when some people need more attention. So I think it's just our innate ability to sense other people's needs and wanting to be present. And it's very, very difficult to say, yeah, I know your cat just passed away, but I really don't have time to talk to you. And I often tell people, like, pets, I treat it the same way as if you lost a mom or a dad or whatever, because for so many people, and I myself included, being an animal lover, that it's a big deal. So that isn't a 911. You got to connect with
Mhm.
someone same day.
That's such a great point. Both of those, right? Because I'm right there with you. I was just on a call with the men's group yesterday, and somebody was talking about, recognizing their younger dog, 4 or 5 years old, was developing lymphoma, and that was,
Mhm.
going to decrease their lifespan. My heart's breaking, right? And then
Mhm.
partially for me too, it's been about one year, very close to one year since I lost, my dog. And yeah, it still hurts. It still hurts. It's, if you're an animal person, dog or cat, yeah, they're important to us. And if you're not an animal person and you don't feel that, well, I don't trust you, and we probably shouldn't be talking. But that's a whole other conversation. But you make a really good point. I love that idea, and I never really thought of it that way. But this, I think, when you do this for a while, you do develop that innate sense of, okay, so I've gotten 5 emails today, and maybe I only have 4 spots in the next 3 weeks. And I can, in my mind, be like, okay, yeah, I think maybe, you can wait a week, and here's what next week looks like. Or, oh, okay, yeah, there's that one spot tomorrow that I was going to take a lunch break, but you really need to have that one. Why don't we figure that out? And I think that's an important characteristic of a good therapist, is knowing, recognizing what human needs are. But what about, come on, we hear it all the time. What about self-care, Rob? Don't you have to take care of yourself to be able to help others?
Yeah, and I will be very honest in that that is a moving target. So
Mhm.
I always tell folks, you don't make a one-time decision to, I'm going to self-care for the rest of my life. It's a very adaptive kind of be in touch with your body, mind, and spirit and do what your body, mind, and spirit is telling you that you need to do. So the good thing, I'm down here in South Florida, is they have these float tank places, which basically you go in. It's the only way to describe it if you've never been to one is it's an indoor hot tub, if you will, but it's about only a foot and a half of water. It's so salty, more so than the Dead Sea, where you can just basically float in a foot and a half of water. It's sensory deprived, so there's music and light if you would like, but I turn that off and I just float. And I did my first 90-minute float last week because I had my psilocybin journey in Oregon. And I'm like, I'm going to go for it. And I fell asleep, and you wake up and you just feel like you have like full body massage. It's just so, and then I do my transcendental meditation while I'm in there. So it's just a very Zen kind of good self-care routine. And then, it's also Florida. So you can go on the beach at 11 o'clock at night and it's still 70 something
Mhm.
degrees and kind of take your shoes off. And I love the water and watching the moon. Yeah, it's special,
Yeah. So
nurturing.
thank you. You've actually encouraged me. First of all, that idea that self-care is a minute by minute, when you can get it, kind of thing. But
Yeah.
recognizing we need it. And I've been saying this a lot lately this year. Sometimes for us, for helping professionals, self-care might be helping more. Right? We talk a lot in logotherapy that, going outside yourself to help other human beings can be a very meaningful experience. But then there's also that balance for therapists of, hey, you gotta make sure you're filling the tank back up, because you can't give infinitely. And I owe you some gratitude. Thank you. You've convinced me to do my first sensory deprivation float. I've
Awesome.
been Yeah, I'm excited. I've been busting it really hard this year. I've got a lot of different ventures outside of just psychotherapy. This week, I'm very excited. I'm leading my first ketamine retreat for therapists, and that's
Very
been
good.
some 3 a.m. last night. I had my preparation call today. Rob, I've led literally hundreds of hours of therapeutic groups, right, in my career. And the idea of leading this preparation group had me up at 3 a.m. just right. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, am I going to do it right? Because I've just so much want to help, and so much want this for the participants to be a
I,
good
I
thing.
get it. I get it. Yeah, you want everything to be perfect.
Yep. And
Yeah.
we know in the end, if you just trust the medicine, it's going to be perfect. Everybody's going to get what they need. But I figured, you know what, that's going to be Friday. Saturday, I scheduled the float. Going to go now. 90 minutes. Definitely not ready to be alone with my thoughts for 90 minutes, but I'm going to go for 30, and we'll get to
Okay.
90 one of
That's
these
a good
days.
good start.
Yeah. And
I
that's as much to recover from this week and preparing for the ketamine retreat as it is preparation. I'll have 1 week of work and clients, and then I take off for my practicum retreat in Oregon that you just came back from. So
yeah.
very excited for that. So maybe we go into that a bit. let's talk about your Oregon experience, your practicum. Most people know, if they've listened to this, that I'm studying with the Integrative Psychiatry Institute, psychedelic assisted therapy, ketamine assisted therapy. I've talked about the amazing people I've met along the way. You definitely being at the top of the list there. Not that there's truly a top of the list because everybody's amazing, and
Everyone's amazing. Yeah, one
everybody.
person's more amazing than the other.
Exactly. That's not fair.
Yeah.
Because I can just picture Lance listening to this right now, being like, "Oh, what? Come on, man! I'm supposed, he's supposed to meet me out there in Oregon." But you just got back a little while ago, right?
Yeah, so last week was my first week back. I was back on the 19th. Wow, it was almost 10 days ago. It feels like we just got back yesterday. But um I mean the journey was incredible. Um but maybe, if you're right, I need to kind of take a step back and maybe go
Mhm.
back to my first psilocybin journey and in Costa Rica, which was February of last year. So just shy of a year from tonight. So making very, very long story short, I had never experienced any kind of depressive disorders in my life. It's situational depression here and there, and I struggle with anxiety, but over the course of the years, learning dialectical behavioral therapy, different coping skills, pretty well managed in the anxiety department. But when I had mentioned having COVID March of 2020, I felt like people had various versions of COVID. Some people had the stomach version, some people had the brain fog version. There was different versions of COVID, if you will. And I really feel like something happened in my head, in my brain, because I started feeling depression, bouts of depression that I never got diagnosed with that. And so, long story short, I had reached a
Well,
point.
hold on, Rob.
This
Let
was
me
the end
jump
of
in because
last. Yeah.
you're saying this was not something you'd experienced before, but this was largely post COVID that you started to feel this.
Yeah, I really, I've done a lot of research on this, and it's a very disempowering. It was a very disempowering time for me because I value, being able to do research and having answers for myself and for other people, and no one knew what the hell was going on, essentially,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
So, I went to, quote unquote COVID specialist back then that just said, well, maybe it's this, maybe it's that,
Hmm.
but really nobody knew. So I just felt extremely lucky and blessed that I was able to continue working and I didn't have the brain fog version. But then, later on, fast forward, there's a lot of research out there on the neurocognitive effects that COVID has had on people. So I think I kind of fell into that camp. I don't know, but listen, it was definitely a before and after COVID for me.
Okay.
So kind of fast forward, I just started feeling, so I was now digitally nomading. I was traveling all over the place. So basically life was sweet. So I had my cake and I was eating it too. I was seeing patients from wherever I was around the globe. I was meeting amazing people, eating amazing food, experiencing amazing culture. There was no reason on God's green earth that I
Yeah.
should have been feeling depressed. So the end of 2023, I spent almost 3 months in Italy with my family. I was, up and down Sicily, Calabria, Milan, Rome, Tuscany. It was families all over the place. And I just remember feeling this existential kind of dread. Like what am I doing with my life? And that's very strange because I'm basically on career number three. So I was uh, I started IT when I was 17 in high school. I worked at IBM until I was 37, and then I was in Catholic seminary on and off, more on than off for a good 7 years, and then I came out. I was completely lost. One of my good friends, colleagues, kind of encouraged me to go like explore this field. Went back to grad school here in Florida in 2012, and now I'm a licensed clinical social worker. So
Wow.
yeah. So there's this background, and yeah, Yeah, I'm sorry. Again, I'm losing
I,
track.
I just from
Or is always,
IT to social. First of all, two,
yeah,
in my experience, completely different personality types. But from IT to social worker by way of seminary, I mean, you're truly a Vitruvian man. I mean, just all of these experiences. But yeah, boy, we can go so many directions. Costa Rica, because you were living this, an amazing life. What
right.
was that movie years ago, The Life of Pi or whatever it was? But
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, that was
uh,
an amazing
this,
movie.
yeah, the spectacular Italian coastal food and wine, yet this existential crisis doesn't
Yeah.
seem to fit.
So, yeah, exactly. So, thank you. And I have to tell you, sometimes post journeys, especially when you're very close after a journey, whether it's ketamine or psilocybin, it's almost like you can be telling a story to somebody and then you kind of lose your place, which I've seen and I've talked to other people about. It doesn't last for forever, but I would say
Mm.
maybe for a good couple of weeks. I need to do some research on that, but usually when I'm having conversations like this, sometimes that happens. So yeah, so
You know what? When I get back, we'll track that, man. I'm gonna keep the Psychonaut journal and be like, okay, and what were we talking about? Um, we'll do a little research, so that'll be interesting. I'll thank you. I didn't think of that. I'll pay attention to that. But for your journey, your struggles in Italy led you somehow.
right.
This led you to Costa Rica.
Yeah, so I had, again, going back to that depression that again, it wasn't diagnosed by a doctor. I just kind of used deductive reasoning, brought it back to that March 2020 diagnosis of COVID. That's when something changed within me. Became depressed. And when I was in Italy, so I was struggling with it for that whole time. So, 2,
Mm,
3 years. And it was just like at that point, I was doing everything right. Right. I had a psychologist back at home. I had uh, a mentor. I have a lot of friends that I've known for 20, 30, 40 years. I mean,
mm,
a lot of people can't say that. So I'm very, very blessed. But I just didn't feel like people were understanding me. So as a clinician, to really experience that, it's hard to really wrap your mind around it. But honestly, Dan, I just felt like I wasn't being seen, I wasn't being heard. So I just felt really down. I felt, like why am I on the earth? Even though I had gone through three careers, and that's why I kind of went back over the three things that I've done in my life, the major things. And I had finally figured out that this was the place I was supposed to be, a psychotherapist, and that everything had happened prior to. And when I got into this field, it made sense. All the potholes that I drove over, everything that I thought I was a loser and a failure turned out to be, wow. I've gone through this, I've processed, I've integrated. Now I'm paying it forward. That's kind of my thing. But yeah, it was really, yeah. So I'm trying not to be too verbose about the whole experience, but
Well,
just,
I think it's interesting to comment on this idea, right? You were doing all of the things right, all the things we tell people to do when they're feeling down, when they're feeling these existential, being connected, having a mentor, having a psychologist, investing in your community, everything short of SSRIs, you were doing.
yeah. And actually, I had also experimented with some psychopharmaceuticals, under the care of my doctor, and I've just always been very sensitive to medicine, and I'm one of those people that, with a black box warning medication, I'm the one person in like whatever 1,000 that's going to have suicide ideation, and so it doesn't work for me. I've always had this sense of spirituality, and that's kind of kept me going even during that dark time. But even that, I just honestly felt. So this is the seminarian Rob coming out. I was talking, praying, and prayer to God. Where are you? Like
Mhm.
I have gone through all this journey, and I really feel like I'm living my purpose, right? I feel like you put me on this earth to do this, and I'm doing it. So why the heck, what, 10 years, 8 years into a very successful career, and I don't even think of it as a career, it's a calling. And the people that have touched me, I've touched. Why am I feeling this way? So I was so down, and I actually, Switzerland has medically assisted suicide, and I had actually looked into it. And I talked to my therapist back at home, and I said, this is going to be the strangest conversation we've ever had. And I said, I basically have an 11-month plan. If I can't, and this would have been this past November, if I can't figure this stuff out, I just don't want to be on this earth. And I said, being a Catholic, I felt guilt and shame. Being a psychotherapist, I felt guilt and shame about that. And how many people have told, me, and you could relate to this as a therapist, how many people thank us because they do all the work, but they think, we're kind of there as a talking
Don't give it
head.
away. Hey, don't give it away, man. Don't give it away. But you're right. They do all the work. We have the
Yeah.
honor of bearing witness and guiding them. But yeah,
Yeah, so it was really, I felt a lot of guilt and shame around
sure.
that. And I think, but I realized at some point, Dan, that it was killing me.
Mm,
I call it stuffing it in therapy when
yeah.
we kind of repress.
Mhm.
So I just knew that I had to come out and tell family that, I was experiencing all this. And, we spoke about this earlier. People have mixed reactions. Some people think, wow, okay, I'm sorry, how can I help? And then, but I got there was some judgment, like it was a moral failing judgment, almost like I
Right.
told them that I can't stop drinking or something. And
Mm.
then they're like, well, what do you mean you can't stop drinking? Or what do you mean like you're having suicidal ideation? So the long story short, thank goodness. And I believe, um, I don't know if you believe in synchronicities or
Mhm.
coincidences or whatever you want to call them. I met two colleagues that had done psychedelics before. They were also psychotherapists, and I trusted them, and I really started educating myself. And boom, one of my friends at the time up in Canada had connected me with this place called Reunion in Costa Rica. So I did my first psilocybin journey there last February of 2024, and the experience was extremely deep. It was extremely spiritual. It was extremely healing. And I'm kind of going to the end of the journey. I went in there not wanting to be alive, and I left not believing that I had enough time on this earth to do everything that I wanted to do. So the gratitude that I mean, everything was perfect. It was a really two shamans, shamankas, female shamans ran it. They were very spiritual and not like they weren't trying to like convert us to their belief system, but they were just big balls of love. I can't describe it any other way. And it
Awesome.
was it was funny because there was a lot of people there who were in healthcare. So I was the
Mm.
social worker. There was a physician's assistant there. My roommate was a PhD for he worked with the government. The one of the shamankas was a neuropsychiatrist. It was trippy. It was really, and the funny thing is, one of my intentions going in is that I want a scientific vocabulary for what I know is going to be a spiritual experience, and it was the perfect it was the perfect setting. Yeah, it was amazing.
So it worked. It helped. It did what we've been learning and training to do is it brought you out of that existential crisis.
Yeah, and not only an existential crisis, but and you study some, theology, it's an
Mhm.
ontological crisis, right? Like questioning your being, like
Yeah.
it goes beyond like, who am I? What am I doing? It's the very essence of person, right? Yeah. So, I mean, basically all of that was answered. And you know, I didn't say this for the audience here, but you would always consider me pretty much goody two shoes. So I,
Mhm.
I maybe smoked a little weed in high school, and it just made me sick. And I, yeah, unless it was prescribed to me by a doctor. So
Mhm.
when I started telling my friends that I was doing psychedelics, they're like, "You're doing what?" Because I just, yeah, alcohol and a little bit of marijuana was my thing when I was a kid, and then
Yeah.
I just stopped doing it. And I work in addiction medicine, and I've seen what that has done to people. So people knew it was serious when I said I'm going to Costa Rica to do psilocybin. That's when it really clicked for a lot of my friends and family. Like, wow, he's doing this. There must really be something going on.
I tell you what, that whole psychedelic medicine in contrast to addiction and substance abuse, there's a couple hours of conversation you and I can have because you're right. That's meeting. I just shared today at the local drug-free for my drug-free meet, Indiana drug-free for where I'm at meeting. I said, hey, by the way, just want to let you guys know I am now certified and connected with ketamine assisted therapy. And you would think I said the most inappropriate thing anybody
Yeah,
had, but the silence. As we're getting ready to end the meet. Oh, first of all, I'm the new chairman of this group, the new meeting, right? So I'm running the meeting. I'm like,
congrats.
hey, just need to let you guys know. And they're all just like, so I go into, well, it's hard to get, what are we, 6 months into training now, something like that, 7 months into training, into a minute before everybody falls over. I'm like, here's the science. Here's why it's good for addictions and all this other, and substance abuse and all these other things. They're like, by the end, one of the main assessors for the local government is like, we need to have coffee. So the science is hard to ignore, right?
Yeah,
You and I are reading articles about people. Oh man, there was one a couple weeks ago, maybe it was a couple months ago. There was a beautiful study. People were offered, I mean, we're talking chronic alcohol abusers, addicts, daily alcohol drinkers were offered 3 doses of psilocybin to help them quit. And I think the research gave case studies of like it took one heroic dose and like people had been clean for 5 years or something like that.
yeah, and I've had clients, look, they're going to do it whether you like it or not. You could,
Mhm.
practice harm reduction. I always tell people, and this is what I did before my journey, get checked out by, your doctor, get a physical, psychiatrist,
Mhm.
whatever. Make sure you're not, uh, you do it the right way. That's what I always tell
Right.
people. Don't, I'm not going to shame them if they want to do that, but um, look, it's powerful. And now kind of, so I've done 3 journeys. I did one
Mhm.
in Costa Rica, then I did art cap ceremony together, and then as you mentioned, I just came back from Oregon about 10 days ago. Each During each ceremony, so the scientific part of it is, the neuroplasticity, and they've done fMRIs before and after psilocybin or ketamine or something, and you're definitely seeing the right and left hemisphere connect in ways that it's not supposed to and traditionally supposed to. And so, yes, that we can see that with our eyes. There's
Yeah.
a lot of things that they don't know, and I'm going to kind of draw back from my philosophy theology days, and I think of Bill W., who's my my hero with the 12 steps, and I think they do a great disservice to the addiction community when they don't tell them that he had an LSD trip and he came up with the 12 steps. And then I love it that step 12 is, now that you've basically gone through this process, now you have to transcend and you have to share it. So I really believe 100% to the core of my being that psychedelics is all about spiritual awakening, whatever that means to that person. Because as you travel in these circles, the journeys are as unique as the people that are in the room, and we all have gifts, and they're made more known to you. And a lot of times for folks like us as healers, your level of intuition gets heightened. You're just I don't know, it's we talk ineffable and noetic, meaning that you
Mhm.
can't really put human words to the experience. And my journeys were full of love. They say the medicine gives you what you need and not what you want. And when I was in Costa Rica and feeling like I didn't want to be here, and look, I always talk a good game, Dan, like that I have good self-worth, self-esteem, like I know that I contribute to the world. Boy, like the universe kind of told me right in that journey, like you don't think very highly of yourself. And I just had it's kind of weird. I didn't have like the visuals that people talk about,
Mhm,
but I had
mhm.
it's almost like if you have your eyes closed and like people are walking in the room and you could sense that they're near you, but so you sense their essence. I guess that's the way to put it. So I had people like in my family, patients, friends, colleagues, whatever, would come into like my consciousness, and I understood for those moments that they were there, the impacts they had on my life and the impacts they had on their life. So I was crying in gratitude. So I
Mm,
was like shown, in my opinion, by the universe that what I did mattered. And I really internalized that afterwards. And then so the other parts of my journey there was I was laughing my butt off, and I'm sorry, this is going to sound a little scandalous as a clinician. There was a poor guy across the room who was vomiting his stomach out, you know, and then the gal next to me was sounded like she was giving labor. It actually reminded me of a Golden Girls episode, but that's neither here nor there. But basically, they were in pain, and for those,
mm,
I went between gratitude to like I heard them suffering, and I started laughing. I was laughing at their pain, and I said to myself, I said, all right, God, what is going on? Like I really take that stuff seriously. I want to be present
yeah.
for people when they're suffering. And again, like I'll say the message that I got, and like you know, no one was talking to me. It's almost like your inner voice, it just becomes very, very strong and prevalent. I just heard
Mhm,
this inner voice just say, "You're too damn serious. You've lost your joy. You need to
mm,
like used to dance, sing, all these things that I used to do. You need to start enjoying life because what you do is a big deal. It takes a lot of bandwidth. And I'm paraphrasing myself here, but yeah. So I feel like I got a roadmap for the
mm,
next, I don't know how many years, because every subsequent journey, the ketamine journey that we did 2.5 months ago, and now the psilocybin journey, it just all built up on this theme that I have like this roadmap now that I have to do. Like I want to do more group work. I want to do more ketamine assisted therapy. I'm not opposed to, you know, hey, if some center in Jamaica or Costa Rica had an opening for a integration therapist, I don't know, you might have to sign me up for that. So
mm,
but anyway, so look, I also want to say, and I'm sorry, I could be very wordy at times. You have to go through. Look, and I'm going to keep it Western based, medicine based.
mhm.
I think I believe you really need to go through the regular channels, meaning find a physician or a psychotherapist or whatever that's really open minded, who he or she will look at you as a whole person, not try to put you into like a nice little box, will listen to you, right? And I always tell my patients, if you find a doctor or whatever therapist that's not listening, fire them and get someone else. But
Yep.
so for some people, you know, going the route of traditional psychopharmaceuticals is the route for them.
Yep.
Sometimes it's not. So there are people with treatment resistant depression and post traumatic stress disorder and other things where you get to the point where it's, you know, ECT, TMS, or ketamine in the US, that those things are legal. So, you know, we've all seen people with ECT, the electro, you know, convulsive therapy, and they have some kind of amnesia for 6 months. Very traumatic.
Right.
TMS, you know, transcranial magnetic stimulation. You know, I think 40% of the time, I don't know, like the numbers aren't as impressive as ketamine.
That's
And then
true.
yeah, ketamine is way up there on the if you're experiencing suicidality and treatment resistant depression, even within one treatment, it could kind of help you reverse that. So anyway, I'm sorry, I think I interrupted you, Dan. You're going to say something.
No, man, that's a beautiful story. I do want to go back and to your point. So many, dude, so many good things in there, right? If you're struggling and you feel like your physician, your therapist isn't listening to you, find another one. It's all about the relationship, all about feeling listened to and being able to, if this is something you're interested in, obviously you got Rob and I here talking to you. We're happy to help. Look us up. It'll be in the show notes. But I want to go back to something you really talked on, right? There's that idea of what you and I I love the program we're in because we're being taught the science. We're shown fMRIs. We're looking at slides. We're seeing neurons and synapses and budding of new dendrites after psilocybin and ketamine treatment. But we're also being taught the art of it,
Mm,
right? We're learning from Mazatec Indian shamans and hearing them speak about the golly, Rob, I don't know, dozens of generations of indigenous people that have used these medicines. And here they are talking to us from across the screen in this fuzzy picture with terrible internet about, honor the medicine, respect the medicine. It's been around for a long time. And so we've got the science and the art of it coming together in this training that we're doing. And that's really what I heard you talking about is recognizing the art. What you described about experiencing family members and friends and realizing that you take life too seriously. Like I think it was one of our recent trainings, or maybe no, something else I was reading about how we've located the part in the brain in the parietal lobe that is responsible for the default mode network, that part of
mm,
our internal conversation that tells us things like be serious, sit up, say smart things, whatever it is. And we know ketamine and psilocybin quiet that for a little while. So there's the science of it, but then there's also that mystical part. And you and I have talked off camera about the mystical experience questionnaire and going through that um, when we silence that part of our internal conversation, we open ourselves up to that which we don't understand on a daily basis. And I think that's also really powerful in these medicines.
yeah, and that's not really, I don't think the standard protocol for all the psychedelics to do they call it the MEQ 30, the mystical experiences questionnaire, 30 questions. But I really found, and again, I'm going to just draw back on my past life experiences. I did a lot of reading on mystical experiences that the Catholic saints had, but also if you read the Kabbalah, the Jewish book of mysticism and all that, and other philosophies and religions, and
Mhm.
and then you start to, you have these psychedelic journeys, or you study people that have had them, and then you meet people who've had them, and then you've had them yourself, and then there was a physician assistant in my seminary who had a near-death experience. So this was back in the 2005, 2007. And he's a physician's assistant. He's a man of science. And here he is telling me about this really bizarro kind of like leaving his body. And so where am I going with all this? It's, I've always had a brain that probably like from the computer science days and working at IBM and stuff, where I'm always trying to put together these disparate data points to make sense.
Mhm.
And it hit me after my first psilocybin journey in Costa Rica that it's all the same. Essentially, whatever the saints were seeing, whatever people who go to the other side go through the tunnel and they come back, and there's tons of YouTube channels on NDEs. Um, and then the journeys that people come back with, and they have similar kinds of stories. And this is where I look, it's maybe it's not scientific per se, but like there's a lot of research that's been done. But when I talk to different people from different walks of life, and we share our experiences and they are strikingly similar, it goes beyond like, oh, this is just a coincidence and a shared delusion. There's more to this. And again, I'm going to trust my own inner healer and my own inner self and spirit, that I've been very spiritual since I was, in my late teens, and I've had a lot of really beautiful experiences. And yeah, there's just, I don't know. I don't want to over spiritualize it, but I don't know how you can't spiritualize it. I
Well,
don't know. What
and
do you?
and I think too many people get confused with making it religious and it's Catholic and they're the saints and they have these, but spiritual is so different, especially when it comes to psychedelics. It really is encountering the mystical. It's encountering that which we don't understand, and different religions can put a framework on it. We can talk in guise of the saints. It's interesting, there's a whole collection of philosophy books back there I'm diving back into, and it's
Mhm.
fascinating. You go back to some of the ancients to Socrates and Plato and Aquinas. And it's amazing how they've all had similar experiences. We're not saying they were all on mushrooms at that time, but there's something going on out there that, yeah, who knows, right? But um, I think we talked, I can't remember if we talked about on camera or off camera this. You were talking about the shared delusion here. And there was an experience in your practicum with somebody next to you experiencing two people being present. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, again, I'll put this under the woo-woo trippy
Whoa, you
experience.
promised me no woo woo. We were just gonna go one woo.
So,
No
all
woo
right,
woo, one woo
just
tonight.
just a little bit. Well, you asked, so I'm gonna have to share.
All right, going
Uh,
full woo woo then. Go for it. I love this story. I think it's amazing.
there was a colleague, two or three. So everyone's like set up on their own mats, and they have the person that's taking the medicine, and the person next to them is their sitter. So two or three mats over. Um, she was playing actually she was taking the medicine, and she, because you come in and out of it, so
Hmm.
you'll have your eye shades on and your headphones, and then you might take it off, and then you might look around the room, and
Hmm.
then you're like, I'm not ready to quite end the journey, so then you go back in. But we ended up talking after, and she said that, so the colleague that was maybe a bed over to my right, because I was acting as sitter, so I was aware of everything
Hmm.
going on. She said she saw like maybe two Indians or something, or Aztec. She remembered the headdress, and had they either praying over one of our colleagues or something was going on over there. And she shared it with me, but she hadn't shared it with him at this point. And then we had a meeting earlier this week, at an integration meeting, and he had mentioned that part of his journey. And he's a very humble, quiet guy who doesn't really like to talk about the woo woo.
Hmm.
Because I think he's a deep thinker. He's very contemplative, and yeah, awesome guy. But he said that he saw two light beings essentially in those positions, right? So again, what makes this really quote unquote crazy, is that in both practicums, you have a room full of scientists. We're all taught in the Western model, right?
Yep.
Um, trust but verify type of stuff. And, look, I've been taught, you ask the same question 30 different ways to make sure that, you're kind of getting stuff out of people. Because, yeah.
Yep.
But I've just heard too many stories, too many similarities, that to chalk it up to coincidence. And again, there's lots of great series. If you're into the Gaia channel, GAIA, that's on Prime. I'm not pushing Amazon or anything, but there's a great series called Psychedelica, and that's where I learned so much information on psychedelics, from you know um, how people get dosed, what type of psychedelic to do for, if you have substance abuse or this and that and the other thing. And it really started to open my mind. And then the trippy thing too was, Dan, when I met one of my friends, my friend Evan. He wasn't religious at all, going back to what you're saying about religiosity and the lens of Catholicism or whatever. And I was sharing my experiences that I had, and this was strictly within the confines of church and prayer and meditation and everything else. And he said, at one point, he said, "Are you sure you've never done psychedelics?" I'm like, "No." I said, "I've just always been a really deeply spiritual person my whole life." He's like, "Yeah, because the stuff you're saying to me, like, that's the stuff that was revealed to me when I was on ibogaine or psilocybin or bufo." So again, here's my mind, my computer science mind, churning and saying, okay, yeah, I don't believe in coincidences. I like tie everything together. And look, I eventually will write a book about all this stuff, because I do believe in the logic of it, and I want to do a lot of research on it. But yeah, there's just, I don't know. Maybe that makes me sound like a crazy therapist or something, but um, there's a lot of stuff in this world that we just don't understand. And by the way, I want to 100% say that I think all of the religions have some of it right, but none of them have it all right. And the humility in that is that we need to really be open-minded and love and accept people for who and what they are. And I think that's one of the big tests of humanity, is stop judging other people and love them. And that's a lot of the messages that come up in the journey is just love yourself first and foremost, but love other people regardless of their atheist or agnostic or Catholic or Jewish, gay, straight, bi, whatever the case is. We all have stuff that we kind of have to deal with in life, but the thing that heals all things is love.
I want to continue talking to you for a few more hours, but that, my friend, is a perfect ending point, right? And I agree with you, and I know that's a lot of what we're being taught in our training is the science, but also the art of this love through this medicine. But man, you just summed it up beautifully. Thank you. Um,
Thank you, Dan.
I can't. It is an honor and a pleasure and a joy and a blessing to know you and to be able to call you friend and to share these experiences with you. Thank you so much. I can't wait to come back from my journey in a few weeks. And
I'm
now
dying to hear about it. I can't
I
wait.
know. So let's compare notes real quick because
Yeah.
man, literally this is going to go on for hours, and I know somebody upstairs needs to do some homework. And as soon as she turns on her monster computer, all the internet disappears. So, um, you intentionally, right? They recommend doses for us when we go to this practicum for a particular experience. You intentionally went with a very low dose, correct?
I did. So I found out that I think I may be incorrect. I think I did 30 milligrams in Costa Rica, which is roughly 3 grams.
3 grams, right?
And that was considered a low dose. But I wanted to do a microdose, which was 5 milligrams, which I was told by both the person who was distributing the mushrooms and the person, one of the facilitators, that it's basically that's a it shouldn't really have any effect on you. You'll probably be
Right.
sitting on the mat with your headphones on and your eye shades, and you'll have a nice meditation. And I was fine with that. I didn't
Hmm.
feel like I wanted to have a full on journey, but I had a full on journey with 5 milligrams. So
That's
the
amazing.
medicine gives you what you need and not what you want. But
Yeah.
one thing
I,
that, sorry, go ahead, Dan.
no, I was just yeah, I think it was the 0.5 gram, a half a gram is really truly considered a microdose and not very journey inducing, not very mystical experience inducing. But yeah, from what you said, it definitely affected you. And I think that says a lot to do with how receptive you were to the experience as well.
Yeah, so I think it was actually 5 milligrams, not zero point 0.5, because I think that would have really been pretty amazing if I was tripping at zero point 0.5. I'm pretty sure it was 5 milligrams that I took because
Okay, yeah, I
it,
was saying 0.5 grams. You're saying oh man, I can't do the math off the top of my head. It's
yeah.
too late for
So
that.
I'm 100% positive it was 5 milligrams. I don't know what that means in grams. So
Yeah.
I could Google that after. But in any case, it was a definite. It was always each subsequent journey reinforced the one before. And by the way, at the end of every
Mm,
journey, I was always reminded that I don't need the medicine to have these experiences. And so then I would always think back to the saints and everything, people in the past who've had these ecstasy kind of moments. And I also look, I remembered, I did hospital ministry for a while in seminary where I would go with Father so and so, and we would pray by someone's bedside who was dying, and just feeling the sacredness and the love in that room. And then kind of feeling that also in these circles. The first night of my ceremony in Costa Rica, and Dan, this happened very spontaneously. And by the way, it's on the mystical experiences questionnaire. Did you have any sense of sacredness and holiness? Right. So before I left the Malokas where they had the ceremony, it was outdoors. It was by no walls. It was by the ocean. It was beautiful. But I just instinctively, before I put my shoes back on, so I walked out. I turned around and I bowed because they had created an altar. I just knew this space was sacred, and I had a very. I mean, I tell people like I've been a spiritual guy all my life. So from 19 to like now I'm in my I am well in my early 50s, but it was times a million, and like that's it's
mm,
not that's
wow.
not metaphor. Like it was the
Right.
most powerful experience I've ever had and the most healing experience. And I know this is also going to sound crazy to people, but I'm so grateful for all the suffering that I went through. I'm so grateful for that because um, I could understand my patients now who are suicidal, and I just don't say I get them. I truly do get them. And I get to say I survived. And I'm not saying that psychedelics are the answers for all of
Mhm.
them, but the level of psychotherapeutic intimacy after a journey, I think, is it changes in a very profound way because you have to go deep within yourself. And then this is where integration is really important. The deeper you go with the integration, the deeper you're going to be going with your clients and quite frankly, everyone in your life. Yeah, it's really, yeah, we can definitely talk for hours about this stuff, but there's so many layers to this.
I think our shared ketamine experience in Boulder is a great example of that, right? That group, I'm not sure if I've said this on the podcast, but we were the first group to
Mm,
do that experience in a group setting rather than splitting off into dyads, couples, things like
right.
that. And so we all journeyed in the same room, and the intensity of connection after just what a 24, 48 hour
Yeah.
experience together was phenomenal. And we, what 2, 3 months later, we're all still in touch on a fairly regular basis, checking in, who's got this coming up, what's going on
Yeah.
here. It's truly been beautiful. So I am anxious but excited for my upcoming experience. I will be sure to report back. I know you and I will be talking. And I also want to mention, I'm going to kind of play therapist here and throw something back at you.
Sure.
You said you came out of your experience with a plan. I know part of that plan that you haven't shared here yet is to do a little bit more of this, correct? Get this out there to other people, maybe your
Yeah.
own. Am I calling you
Yeah.
out too much?
So I definitely, so, I consider myself a very private person. And at the same time, if you're one of my patients, you know that I'm very, I will self-disclose as appropriate, but probably more so than other therapists because I believe when you have a shared experience that really connects you with people. And the first 5 years of my of doing this calling, I worked with kids, and kids smell
Mm,
BS from a mile away. So you got to keep it
absolutely.
real, right? So I always keep it real with people, and I think it also shows them respect, and you're not insulting their intelligence. But anyway, I digress. I really feel like going back to what you're saying about the group and the power of the group, I really feel that, yeah, I mean, like it's evidence based, right? Individual therapy is very powerful, but if you add the adjunct of group therapy, it makes the experience even that much more powerful. And so I think in these circles, I want to do more group work. I really felt strongly that I was supposed to write a book. So back in February, and we kind of call them downloads when you have these
Mhm.
journeys, and it's really hard to describe unless you've had them. It's just getting like the whole content of encyclopedia in your head. It's yeah. So, but I had already been thinking about it, but then this just kind of solidified it. And then I also, so I this is big for me. I want to start my own YouTube channel, but make it about wellness and spirituality. And thank you, Dan, for kind of getting me out of my psychedelic closet tonight. Because another strong message that came up for me was it's not about you, it's not about you, it's not about you. So the universe kind of saying to me like, hey, like you came on this planet and you went through all this crap, you went through, like, you felt lost, you were found, you were lost, you were found, heartbreaks, all the other stuff that happened, people passing away that were significant to me. And by the grace of God, I was able to make sense out of it. And look, I've had mentors, I've had really awesome and amazing people supporting me, and I feel so blessed. And like, how could I not pay it forward to other people? And after psychedelics, how can you not pay it forward to other
Yeah,
people?
yeah. I can't wait for you to get out there. I'll be first in line to read that book, and B, Can't wait for that podcast. I feel so fortunate, so blessed. I'm so grateful to be able to spend time with you on a fairly regular basis
Yeah,
since Boulder, and to have our conversations and to discuss all this great work that you're doing, that I'm doing, that we're doing. And I can't wait to keep that going. It's interesting. You said, you got that download. It's not about you. It's not about you. It's not about you, which took me there's a sticker right here on my laptop from the great the Catholic Bishop Barron that says, "Your life is not about you." And I think in
I
the
love
work that
it.
we do, yeah, in the
Wow.
work that we do, man, that is so true, which goes back to that idea of, and I've been saying this a lot in 2025. We live in a culture that is all about self-care. It's me. I got to take care of me. And I'm starting to see more and more, especially for us. And maybe this is what this medicine is teaching me. Maybe it's not about taking care of me. Maybe it's about taking care of each other. And by doing that, you are taking care of you. I am taking
Yeah,
care.
I love it. I love it.
See, hey man, it's pushing midnight. No, no, I'm kidding. Thank you so much for taking time tonight. I don't like you've had so many wise words to say. I'm not even going to try to summarize them. I'm just going to like put this out into the universe and see how much amazing good it does.
Yeah.
Uh, Thank you,
Dan,
my friend.
I gotta say, number one, thank you so much for being patient with me because I am a newbie to this, and I do get when I do get excited, I talk a lot. But that's okay. We talk for a living. But I don't believe in any chance meetings, especially in life in general, and especially in these circles. And you tend to there's like one person that's more awesome than the other, but I definitely feel like with each practicum, even in our classes where you haven't met people, you just feel
Mhm.
like this pull towards certain people. And I really follow my intuition on that. And I'm like, I like this guy, Dan. And I know I don't want to get into it because we need to kind of wrap it up. But when you talk about logos therapy, and I studied Viktor Frankl in high school, and the suffering and
Yeah.
like yeah, I mean, like it just really resonated with me. I'm like, wow, this is a really awesome person, and I want to get to know him better because I'm like someone who's gonna like go get yeah, study that stuff. Like that's a deep thinker. Yeah, I love it.
Well,
I love
look, man, we'll take a second to talk about the little tribe we formed at lunch in Boulder, right? Like four bald men and
it.
Greg who will all be on here at some point. That there's work we all need to do. Two bald Dans, you and Greg. Yeah, it was awesome. So yeah,
Yeah,
great stuff. All right, we're gonna let the audience go because we're just having a good time here.
yeah,
But
yeah.
let's do
Thank
this again.
you.
I will be first in line for your book. I'll be first in line for your podcast. You just let me know, and as soon as it's out there, I will share with my audience how to go get more of Rob Romano. Thank you so much for your time, my friend.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you.